So I'm Annabelle. Met Chuang long ago at BFM. That was really, really long ago. And this December, it's going to be my 19th year here in Malaysia. And it's been quite a ride and wonderful country, wonderful home. I never understood why Malaysians want to leave. So came from the Philippines, grew up in Manila with a Chinese passport, so it felt like home. But then I just had a different passport and studied and grew up there. Did my uh, first job all the way to working for big tech companies like Hewlett Packard and Nokia mobile phones. Back then it was huge, and it was exciting. Then went to Singapore, got married there, came to Malaysia at December 2006. So that's why coming to 19 years. And it's been a wonderful ride because on the first few years when uh, when some Singaporeans told me that you won't find a job in Malaysia, you should stay in Singapore. The first 3 months, immediately I found a job with Microsoft, and it was a great experience because it allowed me to understand what Malaysians are, what Malaysia is. And after that, I wanted to start my own business. So I quit my job, not knowing what to do. Eventually, found my way to BFM. I was an assistant producer for Frida under the Enterprise show, and my first interview really sucked bad, and I think it's still there. um, yeah, and I always wanted to run my own business. So eventually, after that 2 year journey, I ended up starting my own business. And so from my apartment, from my kitchen to and one juicer with just me and my helper, we eventually compounded business, right? And then clients kept coming in until I met business partners, built a business from the kitchen to one day you wake up, it's 350 employees. So that was how I have seen Malaysia. It's a land full of opportunities. Doesn't matter if you're Malaysian or a foreigner like myself, it's one of the best places to start a business. Yeah.
Okay, I'm from Penang in Malaysia, island. So there's a saying that you can take the island out of the boy out of the island, but you can't take the island out of the boy. My dad was a lawyer, my mom was a civil servant. I remember when I was 18 years old, Annabelle, and my dad he used to subscribe to Asia Week and Far Eastern Economic Review and Malaysian Business. I don't know why at the time I was really interested in these things. And I always asked him to bring these back issues back to the house, and I'd read through them. Had no clue what was going on, but I just had a very big interest in it. And although I studied law and to become a lawyer, I never became a lawyer. I did a couple of corporate jobs. I worked in KPMG as a tax consultant, worked in internal audit at Arab Nation Merchant Bank. But then those things never turned me on. I always wanted to go into investment banking, and I never did. And I think fate has a big role to play in how it turned out. Well, I'll talk about that another time. But it was when I joined The Edge as a financial journalist. That's when I just became a financial journalist. Did a few years in The Edge. Then I started my own business. I was like you. I never wanted to work for people. I always wanted to be my own. And so when I was, I think, 27, 28, me and my friends, we started a .com called Asian Auto. It was a car portal. We were way ahead of our time. We were trying to sell cars on the internet in 1999. .com number one, within 2.5 years, we went from 3 guys in a garage and one financial partner, sleeping partner, to I think we had 65 people on the penthouse suite of Menara Pen Global in Jalan P. Ramlee in KL. We had raised money, we had spent money. We went from nothing to boom to bust in 2.5 years. It was an MBA in Express. Did that, sold the business. Then I went back to journalism, worked for Bloomberg, worked for Reuters, worked in Tokyo, Singapore, London, covering financial markets. Then came back, had a bit of money because I did VSS, separation scheme with Reuters. And then I took a year out, had my first child, and then I did BFM. The thing is, I did BFM. I didn't want to be an employee. I told myself when I left at 37 years old in Reuters in London, that would be my last full-time salary job. BFM was always a way for me to meet people, to have some flexibility, but still to have some income, right? And it was fantastic. So I did that for 13 years, met a whole bunch of people, started a series of businesses in between, and then really, really learned about investing in that 15, 20-year period. And till today, I love investing. I love the idea of investing. It's a dynamic business. It's a dynamic a subject matter. There's so much to understand, and there's so many asset classes. So today I'm fascinated, and I'm glad that I'm doing this with you because I mean, we're both on a journey, right?
Yes.
To kind of like to build wealth and to like maintain the wealth, to manage the wealth, to multiply the wealth. And the good thing is that you and I mean, you much more than me, we're relatively young.
Yeah, in the midlife, right? We're on the midway, and it is amazing to know that there are so many opportunities. So I'm unlike you. I hate financials. I hate looking at numbers. I love marketing. So marketing, communications, branding, that's always been my thing. But today, after all these experiences, knowing that money can compound and there are so many tools and, like you said, asset classes and whatever instruments that are out there, I hope I'm not too late, but I really want to learn this, and that's why I'm here.
Well, I got two things to tell you. The first thing I want to tell you is when I was at BFM in the early 2000 teens, I think 2013, 2014, I was reading the blogs of a guy called Kun Yu Yin. Kun Yu Yin was an entrepreneur. He founded three public listed construction companies in Malaysia, IJM, I think Mudajaya, and one more. Can't remember. And they all three became huge construction companies. So he made a lot of money in business. And then he cashed out, I think, at age 53, 54. And then at age 55, and this is very public, everybody knows this, right? Those that know him, he only started to learn to invest at 55 years old. But because he had run businesses his whole life, the way he looked at investing in business was as an entrepreneur. It's got to make more money this quarter, the next quarter, and if it's going to make more money in the subsequent quarters, then of course the earnings will take care of himself, and then with the earnings will come the share price. So share price always follows earnings. And I remember because I tracked him down in Ipoh, this guy, right? I went for an event in Ipoh and I tracked him down in his house. I went to see him and I said, Kud, I've been reading your stories from a long, long way away and I want to meet you. He took me in. I remember because he welcomed me into his house. He was old already, right? He was in his 80s by then. He was living in this massive house in Ipoh with his wife. His car outside with a driver, massive house by the golf course, but nobody else. And I remember his breath smelled heavily of wine, which I think he had a big night the night before. He was really hungover, right? But then he told me a story and he says, look, the way I look at investing is if this business can make money and make more money than its competitors in the quarters and years ahead, then I can buy that share. And he made much more money in investing from the age of 55 than he did in his three public listed businesses.
Wow.
And he's now, I think, in his mid-90s. So that's 40 years, Annabelle,
Yes, I know. So that's why the message really is, when is it really too early, too late? I don't know, but not taking action, I think, is the worst. of
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to tell you another story, okay? So I used to think a lot of people were like me, really interested in financial markets, really want to know. But actually, the truth is it's not. And I had a very, very personal experience with my family, right? My dad, okay? He is quite a proud guy. Never really wanted to understand much about this whole self-help, self-development, learn about this and all that. And so that's fine. He's a lawyer. He's a very good lawyer, at the time. But then he used to like to dabble in little games, like whether it's horse racing or gin rummy or poker or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there's one time he had lunch with a bunch of guys, and they were all quite well-to-do people in Penang, and they were brought into this syndicate. They were told to come in and buy shares in this company because this big guy was going to pump the share price up and everybody was going to benefit. So all of them, all these big wigs, they all did it and they all took big positions. Little did they know that the guy who promised them that he was going to pump the share price, as they were buying, he was selling. So they all got caught with their pants down, like literally bankruptcy level amounts. And it was a very, 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 very big event in our lives. And I thought to myself, I will never allow this to happen to me. That's why I made it a point from the age I was 18, 19 years old to always learn about this thing, because if you don't, it can snap the other direction.
That's a huge life lesson, right?
Yeah.
And traumatic things happen. So unlike you, I didn't have any. Um, I didn't get to have newspapers like Financial Times and all that, and I've always felt it was boring to talk about retirement, which now, ironically, is the this one thing that you always think about. But what I've seen is my parents. I grew up in an entrepreneur family. They all run businesses. Uh, Most of the Chinese back in the Philippines, they want to run their own business. Very few Chinese would work for others. So unlike here, I walk into, let's say, any shopping mall, I would see Chinese working maybe behind the counter, or a Chinese driver in Grab. This is something you wouldn't see back in Manila. So as they all run businesses, you eventually grow up and say, you know what? It didn't look sexy. I don't want to work for my family. I also don't want to start my own business. I want to work for the corporates. So very opposite, because what you wanted was that fancy office, work your way up the ladder, earn salary, go on trips, reimburse, a couple of things that is covered by the company. You get health insurance. I bought my first car immediately the first few weeks going into Hewlett Packard. So those were very fancy, and I think back in the Philippines, a lot of people can relate that it's the way to go if you came from a very entrepreneurial family and you see behind the scenes. So the last thing I wanted was to be an entrepreneur. But years down the road, when I came over to Malaysia and had my daughter, that was the defining moment. You realize, do I want to push this elevator button all the way up this Petronas twin towers and keep coming here and be maybe one of the high position one day? And if the answer was no, what the hell am I doing here? So that's the reason why I would leave without an opportunity, without a grand plan. And thankfully I did that, because if not, then I would still be an employee today, and I wouldn't have met all the great people, a lot of great Malaysians who have given their advice, who have come along the way and really showed that entrepreneurship is not easy, but it's worth spending time on. And right now, with all these things happening in the market, I felt that entrepreneurship is great, but I missed out in that window learning about compounding money, investing, right? We did try to invest. Don't be mistaken. It's not that we've never invested. It's just that we've always outsourced it because it's not something that was top priority. We were busy making money, or my husband was working, traveling. And so you just leave the money, and once it's one big chunk, you go and talk to the bank or the financial advisor, and they will advise you, okay, based on, I guess, the fees that they can earn from it. And it wasn't always a win. You also lost money, and you thought they were the smart ones, right? They were the advisors. They always watch the markets. I've never watched the markets as much as I've seen now, like Bitcoin price, this price. Not that I'm always buying, but being aware. And knowledge is power. The moment you've met more people talking about how money can compound, how money can become much more, and how the rich people are doing it, I think once you're awake, it's very hard to go back.
Yeah, that's right. Just on the subject of entrepreneurialism, I was very, very clear, very, very clear. Even from when I was young, I never wanted to work for people. I always knew. I don't know why I knew, but I always knew that working for somebody was always going to be more risky than working for myself. Because why? You are putting yourself, and I always knew even at 21 years old, I thought that if I continued to work for the rest of my life for somebody, imagine if I had a wife and children and my kids were in school, I had a house to pay for, and then my boss, makes the wrong decisions. He's not going to sack himself, he's going to sack me. I always knew this, and I always told myself, I'm going to give myself a limited time frame to work for people, and then I'm going to start my own. And true enough, I started my first business at 27 years old. At 29, I was really sacking people. And I remember there was one time, I had the biggest team in the whole office. I had 22 people under me. And there was one guy who was 45 years old. He had 2 kids. And he started crying on me, Annabelle. He started crying, and I thought to myself, holy shit, man. Me and my 2 partners, we made the wrong decisions. And this guy pays for it, I was heartbroken because He was on his, I put him on his ass. And so I think that for most people, if you can, you must take control of your life. Don't outsource your future and your career to someone else, because today, especially in the age of AI, you don't know how long your job is going to last. You know?
It's not an easy decision for other people to become an entrepreneur, right? Even though they can listen to a lot of self-help, social media talking about entrepreneurship is the way to go, own your business. Not everyone is built to be an entrepreneur. I think
It's a lot of sacrifice.
yeah, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of mistakes, a lot of doubts. It comes and goes. But I've met people who were really great employees, and they are great employees. They go home, they enjoy their life. Weekends are weekends. And I remember how it feels like weekends are weekends. Really, literally, office is shut down. I can enjoy my money. I'll see you on Monday. No worries behind, no salaries to pay, just my own savings, my own family. But in today's time, it is so much more easier to do what you just said. They can still hold their jobs and they can have a side gig, which with AI, with social media, I do see a lot of the young people doing this. And this wasn't possible before. It was you're in the office 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, 8 to 5, and there's no other way to make money because you're physically present at the office. Now, hybrid working is made available, which didn't exist before COVID. It wasn't acceptable at all. And now they have all these tools. Not just, you don't even have to hire a lot of employees to do what? Editing. You don't even need a server. So back then when I was building the company, and we opened a lot of outlets, we had a lot of POS servers and POS systems, and we needed to consolidate. We had to consolidate the sales. I spoke to someone who was quoting us servers, and my gosh, the price was so high. I'm like, no, we're just selling juice here.
Yeah.
We can't afford a whole IT system. So then we just went the manual way. But lo and behold, fast forward, I think just in 3-4 years, POS systems on the cloud where you don't need to own your servers. They keep updating your POS system through the cloud. You don't need to own anything, and you could pay software as a service or storage as a service, which is amazing. So today, more than ever, it's easier to become an entrepreneur, but it's also easy to be a side entrepreneur or a side gig. So that, I think, for people who are listening and you're worried and you're doubting that, can I really do this? Now you don't have to be like us. For you, it's you always known. For me, is I didn't want, and then I realized I want. So I had that full corporate experience, and then I jump out to do entrepreneurship. But for others today, they can do both at the same time, which I think is a wonderful, great era.
Yeah, I'm now in my mid-50s, right, Annabelle? And in fact, last night I just had dinner with a bunch of guys my age, right? And they've spent their whole life working for the man, you know. And one of my friends, actually, he went on a motorcycle trip with me to India. Before India, he had just submitted his resignation. And I was so happy for him because for the first time, you know, he has the freedom to go on holiday whenever he wants, to dress however he wants, to behave however he wants, to behave in public however he wants. Because when you work for people, you don't own your life, you know. You have to behave a certain way. You got to apply for leave, for God's sakes, right? You want to go on holiday, your boss can say yes or no, right? How long you go for, you know, when you can go, whether you can go, right? What time you go for lunch, what time you come to work, how you dress, all that is up to the company, not you. So I always, for me, freedom is the most important thing. To be free, to be who you want, when you want, how you want, where you want, to say what you want.
And in order to have freedom, you have to make sure that the money compounds and that you have safety net, right?
That's why money is so important. And then I always knew investment is the only way to do it because your salary is not enough. You know, when you're working for people, right? It's called an increment.
Yeah.
You know, what's your increment this year, right? Increment is basically short for incremental, which is tiny, small. 3, 5, at the most 10%, 15%. 15% was incredible, right? But most of the time it's like 4, 5%. At the rate of inflation, if you're lucky. And inflation is not really 4 to 5%. It's much higher than that, right? So you can't grow your wealth by working for people. You can't. Especially not as a journalist. I always knew that. And as a financial journalist, right, I'm talking to all these fund managers and analysts and bankers and investment bankers, and they're making a shit ton of money, you know. As a media guy, like, how much are you going to earn, right? So I always knew, in order to be all right and to have freedom, I needed to have money. And to have money, you must invest. You don't invest, you don't learn to invest, you're screwed.
You got to where you are because you were surrounded by people. So as a journalist, you met all these people, you see how they make money.
Yeah.
And that's why they say you are the average of 5 people you're with, and be careful who you hang out with.
Yes.
So hopefully, as I hang out with you and as these people all watching hang out with us, we can all grow together in terms of learning how to make money work for you, make more money, and to just make the right decisions, right? I don't think we will always be right, but then we'll be sharing how we are doing it. And that's one thing that I really like about doing this, because it's a commitment. For me, it means it's a commitment to really get into that game of, I'm not from a finance background, I'm from marketing, and I had studied marketing and psychology, but just as what you said, being surrounded by seeing how people make money, how they compound their wealth, and not just money, but wealth in general, wealth, whether it's freedom, it's living well, it's enjoying the moments, which time is the only element that all of us are equal, right? We won't get more of it, we won't get less of it. We're born into this world and we know it's borrowed time. And so how do we make the most out of that moment? So hopefully your ideas and your thoughts on investing will rub off on me, because that's what I would like to happen in terms of investing and how I think about money. And you should tell her that rule. It's very funny, that rule that you told me the first time we met.
Oh.
The rule about investing. That's
It's not my rule, it's Warren Buffett's rule.
Oh, okay. Well, please repeat.
So rule number 1 in investing is don't lose money. And there's rule number 2, which is don't forget rule number 1. And rule number 3 is don't forget rule number 2 and rule number 1. Don't lose money, okay?
So
but just as much as we are, you might learn something from me. I learned something from you earlier this year, because I've been doing Do More for a number of years by myself, right? And then you told me something which I'm like, oh my God, how can I not realize this? What an idiot I am. And thankfully, hopefully we can do something together, and it's going to be meaningful, because to me it was always meant to be CSR and, it's not enough. Because if it doesn't have financial sustainability, it cannot go on. It doesn't make sense. Then you lose passion, you lose your energy.
You lose the steam, and you will not be able to reach as many people as it could, right? In terms of your message. So true sustainability for a business, whether you want to, I don't know, depending on what your objective is, but true sustainability is if you could bring the rest of the people with you, right? Whether it's hiring people, salaries, then you grow your influence, you can touch more people and really help more people out there. So it's great what you've done in terms of CSR, and you've done it for many years. And now it's even better, because with this commitment, I do hope that it helps people out there in some form or shape. And for me, it has already helped me at that 1%, which is wake up. Your money is sitting in the time deposit and it's not doing anything there.
Yeah.
And look at the world. Before I met you, I thought cryptocurrency was a scam. You thought it's something that's like a fad. NFT, came and went. I didn't buy anything, but they were explaining to me about it. And I'm into art. I love painting, but I didn't buy other people's digital art. So you thought, because of all these news, that crypto was another thing, right? Another fad. But after knowing you and reading all the news and being more aware and being informed and looking at the laws that were passed, the countries that are adopting this cryptocurrency is not going to go away. And I want to understand it more.
Well, financial markets, it's an endless education, Annabelle. And the thing about financial markets, there's always a new thing. There's always a new asset. There's always a new idea. There's a new narrative. There's a new theme. Today it's digital assets, right? 30 years ago, what was it? Equities was very new. 40 years ago, the share market was new, right? How old is Bursa Malaysia in Malaysia? It's maybe the first stock was 1967. That's only 50 years ago, 60 years ago, right? Back then, oh my God, buy a share. Oh, so risky. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about two things, right? I think it's fate that we're doing this together at this age, because if we had done it earlier, I think there is all that experience that doesn't get shared, right? For me, um, um, I've come to this stage after having made many mistakes, right? I remember when I was in the age in the late 90s, and I wanted to buy shares in your old company,
Yeah,
Microsoft, right?
Microsoft, yes.
And I knew I wanted to buy Microsoft because I knew it was going to be big, right? So I approached the bank and I said, hey, I want to buy these shares in the US company. So they gave me a whole bunch of forms this thick, right? The WW, don't know what, some foreign disclosure, right? And I tried to fill it in. I got through the first 4 pages. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I got to fill in this. I'm going to send it back to America, get it back. So it was a whole process. I didn't buy. But if I had bought, like say, at the time I could have afforded maybe 5,000 ringgit if I
Yeah.
borrowed money, right? You know what? In those days, Microsoft market value was maybe, I don't know, 80 billion or so. I can't remember. Something tiny, right? Maybe 30 billion US dollar or whatever it was, right? Today, Microsoft is $3.5 trillion. It's 100x, right? If I had invested 5,000 ringgit, what is 100x of that? Right?
Yeah.
$5 million bucks.
Yes.
I don't have to talk to you today
Yeah.
in the studio. You know what I mean, right?
Well, it's meant to be. It's meant to be. Yes. I mean, yes. So missing out on that.
But today, Microsoft is old. It's done. It's $3.5 trillion. It's a mature. It's a dinosaur already, right? It's grown up. It's slow. You know, it doesn't have the same growth. But there's new things, right? And what are the new things? Don't be so proud or so egoistic. Say, oh, that's this or that. Remember, in those days, people used to think that Amazon was a scam.
Yes.
Oh my God, don't buy shares in Amazon. They lose money every quarter. They've been losing money for 30 straight quarters. Well, guess what? Amazon today is 2.9 trillion dollars market cap. So what? So today, some of these digital assets are yesterday's Amazons and Microsofts, right?
Yes.
Who are we to say that it's a scam? And in those days, you thought it was a scam. My friend, they were not a scam. They were the future. So what is that? I don't know, right? There's no place for ego in investing. And so today we find ourselves, I would say, on the middle of the 50s, and there's all this experience. And Kun Yu Yin, right? The guy who founded Gamuda and Mudijaya, he started the share market investing at 55. He's still alive at 95. So that's 40 years of investing.
Yeah.
So the mistakes that I make today, hopefully, will be fewer and far further in between, and I make better decisions. Then if we share those decisions with people around us, maybe they can make fewer mistakes. You have to make mistakes anyway, right?
Yes. If you fear mistake, then that there's inaction, and you'll never learn from
Correct.
that. And for people like us who has gone through a lot, that's where the wealth of knowledge comes. Because I always thought, would you go to a dentist with bad teeth, or would you go to eat at the restaurant where there is a skinny vegetarian chef? So same goes for giving advice. How do you give advice if you've
After
never
having made a lot of mistakes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if you've made the mistakes, burned some money, made some enemies, made some friends, that's when you really know that, okay, hopefully from this mistake other people can learn from it, and then you share. And hopefully with this and more people out there, I'm happy to also learn from other people and the people that we will get to interview around wealth, around living well.
Yeah. So this is the first ever recording in
Yes,
this place.
first ever.
It's a bit there right now.
We just moved in. We DIY the lights, and we haven't put the other chairs that we ordered. But meantime, this is antique furniture from your place. Yeah, first recording. Let's see where this goes. Hopefully, it reaches a lot of people beyond Malaysia. To be honest, I would love Filipinos from Manila, from the Philippines, to also learn from this, because the poverty level there is high. And typically Malaysians like you, unless you've been well-traveled, they grew up not really seeing poverty. They see poor people, but not poverty. But growing up in Manila, there is no escape. Even the commute to that beautiful office that I go to, you will drive past poverty and they'll knock on your glass door while you're driving, begging for money. So that really wakes you up to this is the reality. For Malaysians, they know what is hardship. In fact, Malaysia doesn't have the same calamities, natural disasters that we have back in the Philippines. And the government, yes, I know you have your complaints. It's not a perfect government, just as every other country out there doesn't have a perfect government. But in the Philippines, it's really bad. I've left for close to 2 decades and it continues to be the same. So for Malaysia, being here for the last 2 decades, I could see the progress. There is progress. It may not be Singapore, but the life is also not Singapore. And here, everyone's relaxed, chill. People are great. So I'm hoping that whatever we learn and uncover and the stories we could do shouldn't be just for Malaysians. It could be for the rest of the people out there, midlife or younger, who's willing to learn, older people who want to learn what's new. This should be the place that we discover and we share it with the world.
Yeah. So come along with us on this journey.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, we're going to be here to help you do more with your life.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah.